Hey, good morning. This morning I have some good news for you, and actually some bad news for you. And the good news is that the Alberta government has moved to phase 1 of relaxing the COVID-19 restrictions, which means that starting next Sunday, we're going to start meeting for church worship services, and I know we've all been waiting for this. The bad news is that COVID-19 is still with us, so the government still is imposing restrictions. And so the first restriction is that the maximum that we can have in a service, actually the maximum we can have in the church, is 50 people, which includes staff and volunteers. So that means we're going to have to go to multiple services. So starting May 24th, we're going to be offering worship services at the following times. The first one will be Saturday evening at 7 p.m. Then Sunday morning at 9 a.m. and then Sunday morning at 11 a.m. And if these three services fill up and we need to offer a fourth service, we'll be doing so Sunday evening at 7 p.m. But we'll not offer that fourth one until the other three are full. And for those of you who would rather not come out in a group yet and would rather stay at home, we'll record the Saturday evening service, and that'll be online for Sunday morning for you. And since we cannot have everyone showing up at the same service, we're going to need you to sign up for the service that you want to attend. And when you sign up, you're not just signing up for that one service on that one weekend, but you're signing up for the same time of service for the weeks ahead until the government allows us all to be together in one service. So please do give some thought to that. And I want to emphasize this: please do not attend a service for which you have not signed up for, as that service will be already signed up and full, and we would have to turn you away. Please sign up for only also for you and those who are living in your house. Do not sign up for family or friends outside your home. They need to sign up for themselves. So to sign up, we're going to start that starting this week on Tuesday. And Esther's going to be here Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday mornings from 9 till 12. And you can just phone the church at 926-4261 and ask for Esther, and she will sign you up for that. And if that doesn't work for you and you are unable to phone in on one of those mornings, then just call her on her cell phone. We're giving you advance notice so that you can think about which service you would prefer. You need to be aware that there's going to be restrictions when you're attending. The first thing the government is asking is that you self-assess yourself against the COVID-19 symptoms before attending. You can do so by going to their website, or Tim is putting this announcement on the church webpage, and it has the symptoms there. And so if you have any of the symptoms, what the government is saying, please do not attend on any given Sunday that you have symptoms. Second restriction that they're saying that we have to do is physical distancing must be maintained between people who are not of the same household at all times. And that means they're asking that infants and children must remain with their parents or guardians at all times in order to maintain the social distancing. And nursery and children's church will not be happening. They're not allowing us to do that. The fourth restriction is that individuals not from the same household must maintain social or physical distancing when coming into the church and leaving the church. So what we're asking as you come in, just don't all come in one line. Spread yourself out between your household groups. Leave that 2 meters in between. Hand sanitizer will be provided as you enter and as you leave, and the government is asking that you sanitize your hands both on entry and on exit. Seating will be marked, so please do not sit in rows which are marked off limits. You're asked to sit in your household group and are asked to leave at least 2 meters between groups. So that means in our situation, between groups, we need to allow 5 chairs between groups. List will be kept of all who attend, and the reason the government is requiring this, and I know some of you may rebel about there being a list that the government can access saying that you went to church, but they're asking that they're saying that we have to keep a list. So if someone comes and they have COVID-19, then the government can do the contact tracing and make others aware that you've been in contact with it. So that will be happening. As you enter, Esther will be sitting there at the door and checking off on the list those who come on each Sunday. Handshaking and hugs are not allowed. We do encourage you to visit and fellowship and even stay for a bit afterwards and visit and fellowship. But again, they're asking that we keep that social distancing, so with anybody that's outside your household group. And the last restriction the government is putting on us, congregational singing is not allowed. And so our musicians will do some singing up front, but you're not allowed to sing with them. So please refrain from singing and just simply use the occasion to worship quietly together. Maybe you want to hum along, but we're not allowed to sing. So I know that this all seems very strange, and some of you are going to feel like rebelling against these rules, but I encourage you to respect their government and what they're trying to do through these rules. Let's appreciate simply that we can be together again and be thankful for that, even if it is in small groups. And it's going to be very good to worship God again, even if our group size is limited. So I look forward to being with you again in the services, and it'll be great to preach to a larger audience than just two, and that's going to be great. And the last thing I want to say is that not everyone is on Facebook. I'm going to put it on there. And not everyone checks the web page, and not everyone listens into the message. So please pass this info on to those that you meet and make them aware of what's happening. So with that said, I'd like us to go into our message here this morning. And this morning I'd like to interest you in a piece of real estate. This piece of real estate includes a beautiful home designed just for you by a master architect. There's been no expense spared. He's taken into consideration your every wish, your every want as he designed this home. And the home is in the most beautiful city that you've ever seen. In fact, the most beautiful city of all the ages. Don't think of a dirty, dusty city with garbage. Think of a paradise with clean, flowing streams, parks, mature trees, clean streets that are golden. The streets are flawless. You'll never find a pothole in them. The utilities are free. You'll never need lights on in the house because it's always daytime there. There's no pollution or smog, and the climate is perfect. It's a city full of love and laughter and music and meaningful things to do. You'll never be bored. And alongside you are the best neighbors that you've ever experienced. In fact, the whole neighborhood is like that. There's no crime there. You'll never have to lock your doors. In fact, locks will be meaningless. Nothing bad ever happens there. Only good things. There's no disease. Does it sound too good to be true? Well, it isn't. This is our future heaven. This is our future home, which Jesus is preparing for us. And He's the master architect who knows you much better than you know yourself. And He's preparing this place for you. And in Revelation 21, we're given a description of this New Jerusalem. So this morning I want to take us just verse by verse through this description of the New Jerusalem. It's the new heaven. And I just encourage you, after we're done, just take your family, and because we're just cutting it up into verses, read it right through. Just one sitting, one passage. Read it through and get the sense of it. So John begins there in verse 1 of Revelation 21, and he says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea." Last week, I ended our timeline with God, after God destroyed this universe, the stars and our earth, He recreates a new universe. And this is where John is picking up his narrative in Revelation 21. John doesn't describe this new heaven and earth, but if you want to picture it, think of what you see now and go from there. It's literally physical stars, it's a physical sun, it's a physical moon, it's a physical earth, soil, minerals, clay, rocks, water, plants, animals. Now you may be asking, is it going to be the same as our Earth now? Will the continents be the same? Will the Earth be the same size, bigger, smaller? Are we going to have the same plants and animals? And again, we don't know the answers to those questions. It does mention horses, so we do know that there's horses. And it's very possible that it's a recreation of the first creation. And you have to understand that this earth as it was first created is not at all like what we see now. What we see now is just a shadow of what was then, before sin entered, before the curse entered. And so this earth has gone through a lot of destruction and reorganization over its lifetime, and many species of plants and animals have been lost, and they know that way back then many of the species were bigger, and so you had gigantic beavers and gigantic plants and elk with, I think it was antlers on them about 8 feet tall. You know, these elk were just huge, and on it goes. There was gigantic things there, totally different than now. And so if we could go back to that first creation, when God first created it, it would be a very different earth than what we see now, a much better earth. What we have now is very run down. It's a shadow of what was first created. So just take the best that you can imagine of now, and it'll be even better, even if it's the same as that first earth. Think of beautiful scenery, countless species of animals, all tame. And God made that earth and everything in it, and He saw it was good. And so what God is doing is He's taking it back to being good. And so that's what John sees as he's there. He sees this new earth, this good new creation, and then he says in verse 2, I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. When the doors open at the back of a church in a wedding, and everyone's just waiting expectantly for that bride, those doors open, the bride enters, and she's seen for the first time, dressed in all of her finery. Hours have been spent on her hair, there's a glow on her face, and people tell her afterwards, you were just so beautiful. And there's that sense of excitement and anticipation and joy and hope in the air. As John sees this new Jerusalem coming down from the air and descending onto the earth, that's his reaction. He's trying to describe his feelings, and he describes it like seeing a bride for the first time, just beautifully dressed. He's trying to give us a sense of what he felt as he saw this city. And in verse 3 he says, I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, now the dwelling of God is with men, and He will live with them. They will be His people, and God Himself will be with them and be their God. And so this city literally becomes the new heaven. Remember, I defined heaven as the place where God lives and from where He rules. It's the place of where His throne is. And so His throne is in the city, and God the Father sits on it. And God the Son, Jesus, sits beside Him on that throne. And so literally, this new Jerusalem on this new earth becomes our forever heaven. Forever, God will live with us. Forever we'll be His people. There'll be no strain, no ever losing this relationship. Forever He will personally be with us. Forever He will be our God. Now I want to ask you, does that get you excited? It should. Because this will be the best part of heaven. There's lots of other good things, but this will be the best part of heaven. God has come to be with us forever, and we have that relationship. If this doesn't get you excited, then you really need to examine yourself and find out why it doesn't excite you. But John doesn't just stop there. There are many other good things. Verse 4 says, He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There'll be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. John isn't trying to name all the bad things of this life here. He's just giving us a summary. Life is full of bad things that make us cry. Death, for example, happens to all of us. But he's saying none of that happens in this new Jerusalem. There's a story of a father and a son. We're listening to a preacher talk about this, and the preacher was commenting that in heaven, morticians would have to find a new job because there'll be no death. They'd be out of work. And at that, the son leaned over to his dad and said, "Dad, you're going to be out of work also." You see, his dad was an insurance salesman. And it's true. There'll be no one selling insurance in heaven because there'll be no need. Because there'll be no death, no disasters, no bad things. Here on earth, we all experience and do things which make us mourn and cry and which creates pain in us, whether it's spiritual, psychological, or physical pain. For 39 years, I've lived in constant pain. For 39 years, I've dealt with the effects of brain injury and neck injury. And I just love this verse. It says that there will be no more pain, for the old order of things has passed away. All the negative things which belong to this order of life have passed away, gone, never to be experienced again. With my constant headache that's from the brain injury and the neck injury, there's nothing that they've tried through all the years that took away my headache until my knee was replaced. Now, painkillers do not work with me. They actually make me sick. And when I had my knee replaced, I told them not to give me any of those, but they gave me morphine anyways. And after I quit vomiting, we won't go into all those details, but after I quit, they gave me Toradol. I never had that before. Whole different type of painkiller. And Esther came to visit me the next morning. She said, "How are you feeling?" I said, "I'm feeling wonderful. I have absolutely no pain. I'm feeling the best that I have in decades." I thought I was feeling wonderful. She thought I was feeling buzzed. But you know, the worst part of being pain-free was knowing that it was only temporary and that as soon as it wore off, I would experience the pain again. But not in the new city. All pain, all forms, whatever it is that gives you pain, in what, emotional or spiritual, physical, whatever it is, it's going to be gone. And you're going to be feeling absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Let's move on to verse 5. He who is seated on the throne said, "I'm making everything new." Then he said, "Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true." He said to me, "I am the Alpha, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To him who is thirsty I will give to drink without cost from the spring of the water of life. He who overcomes will inherit all this, and I will be his God, and he will be my son." What God is saying to us, this is sure. It's going to happen. It's more sure than anything. There's absolutely no chance that this is not going to happen. It is done, he says. No, it's not done yet. But what he's meaning is it will be done. It has to be done. It's an absolute that you can count on. Because when God says it, it will happen. You see, it depends upon God to do it. And God is the beginning and the end. He controls everything. It cannot happen because God has declared it done. And so what will happen is you will drink of that spring of water of life forever. You will inherit all these things. God will be your God forever, and you will be his son or daughter forever. It is done. It's a done deal. Excuse me. It's 100% certain. So say with me, it is done. It is done for all believers, he says, who overcome. But John says that there's a different type of person for whom it's not done. The person who rejects God, who only lives for himself, and they'll not have a place in this city. Verse 8, "But the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the sexually immoral, those who practice magical arts, the idolaters, and all liars, their place will be in the fiery lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death." And so not everyone is going to this heaven. There's a second death, a place of fire, that those who reject God go to. And I encourage you strongly this morning to make sure that you know that you're going to heaven. If you don't know, talk to someone and make sure of that. Moving on to verse 9. "One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues came and said to me, Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And he carried me away in the Spirit to a mountain great and high. And so here we have the angel take John to a mountain which is great and high. He's going to give John the best seat in the house, so to speak, to see this holy city, the Jerusalem, coming down to earth. And perhaps the mountain is great and high, or perhaps the mountain that's great and high is actually where the city is coming down. Picture it just coming down around John. I don't know. But the scripture often speaks of the mountain of the Lord. And that's just my own personal. I'm wondering if it actually descends on a mountain and John is on that mountain and it comes down around him. Perhaps he's on a great high mountain off, but if you're going to see cities as big as this one coming down, to gain perspective, you're going to have to be on a very huge mountain. And he goes on here, John says, and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. It shone with the glory of God, and its brilliance was like that of a very precious jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal. If you listen to my earlier sermon about the present heaven and all those descriptions of light, and everything within heaven is designed to reflect light in all of its glory, that's what we have here. Wherever God displays himself, it seems that he does so in brilliant light, not just brilliant white light, but it's light divided. You have all the colors of light that are shining out. And so what does John compare it to? He compares it to jasper, because jasper, I believe, comes in many different colors. He's trying to tell us, I'm seeing all the colors of the rainbow, so to speak. And he says it's like a clear crystal. It's not like a rock that is solid color. It's clear, you can see through it. It beams out those vibrant colors. And then verse 12. It had a great high wall with 12 gates, and with 12 angels at the gates. On the gates are written the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. There were 3 gates on the east, 3 on the north, 3 on the south, 3 on the west. The wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. The angel who talked with me had a measuring rod of gold to measure the city, its gates and its walls. The city was laid out like a square, as long as it was wide. He measured the city with the rod and found it to be 12,000 stadia in length, and as wide and high as long. He measured its wall, and it was 144 cubits thick by man's measurement, which the angel was using. So I want to picture this city. I want to take you on a drive around it. So let's start on let's start on the southwest corner of the city. And so we're going to drive north with the wall on your right hand side. And you have this great high wall. We don't know how high, it just says very high. And you drive for 1,400 miles, between 1,400 and 1,500 miles, in a straight line before you reach the next corner. And during those 1,400 miles, you've only passed 3 gates going into the city. Which a city that big, and you only have 3 gates on the side, means that you're going to have just a huge superhighway coming in and out of each of those gates. Because people are going in and out from all over the world. So now you reach that corner and you turn right, and so you're going east, and you repeat it. You go 1,400 miles, and again you pass only 3 gates. And you reach the next corner, and you turn, and you're going south now, and you repeat it. It's another 1,400 miles, and you only pass 3 gates on that side. 3 more superhighways. And then you reach the next corner, and you turn, and you're now going west, and you repeat it again, 1,400 miles, and only 3 gates. And now you're back where you started. You've just traveled 5,600 miles to go around this city, or over 9,000 kilometers. You would have to be on a very great and high mountain to see something that huge coming down out of heaven, to be able to see it in perspective. Now here's what really astonishes me, because my brain can't grasp it. This city, John says, is as high as it's wide, and so it's not 1,400 miles on each side, it's also 1,400 miles tall. And so we have to wonder at that, is this a cube with many layers? Think of it like a gigantic apartment building with each layer, everything it needs? But that doesn't fit the description that comes later. Is it a triangle like a pyramid? That'd be very steep sides to be living on. Some picture it as a high mountain. You know, it's beyond our comprehension. And the question I have to ask, is it something totally else? Something totally outside of our experience and comprehension that John just was not able to describe. And I think that's more likely the case. But when you think of the scale of things, of a city that's 1,400 miles by 1,400 miles by 1,400 miles high, I really wonder if the new Earth is going to be a much bigger Earth than now. I'm no proof of that. But just think of a city that's 1,400 miles high on the Earth that we have now. It would be just sticking way, way up there. I wonder if the Earth is going to be much, much bigger. Let's go back to that city. Back to the gates. And John says, on the gates are written the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. The walls sit on 12 foundations, and on the foundations are the names of the 12 apostles. And in this symbolically, we see the coming together of God's plan for Israel and for the church. There's one more detail about the wall. It says it's 144 cubits, which works out to 216 feet. 216 feet of what? Is that 216 feet high or 216 feet thick? And so some of your translations simply say it's 144 cubits. Don't tell you what, because that's literally what the original says. Others will, you'll read that it says 216 feet thick or 144 cubits thick. And what the translators are assuming is that it's referring to the thickness, because we are told the length and we're told it's very high. So now this, they think, is referring to the third dimension, how thick the wall is. If it's 216 feet thick, then how high is it? It says it's very, very high. And so is it 500 feet high? That would make it twice as high as it's thick. Is it 1,000 feet? 2,500 feet? We don't know. But if it's exceedingly high, 216 feet thick, it could well be up there even thousands of feet high. How would you like to go for a stroll up there? Evening stroll on top of that wall. And yes, it would be safe, because in heaven, nothing bad will happen. And John says this is a very unique wall. It's made up of jewels. Starting in verse 18, the wall was made of jasper, and the city of pure gold, as pure as glass. What he's saying is this gold is transparent. You can see through it, and it reflects light. It's the color of gold, but it's reflecting light. The foundations of the city walls were decorated with every kind of precious stone. The foundation was jasper, the second was sapphire, the third chalcedony, the fourth emerald, the fifth sardonyx, the sixth carnelian, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th jacinth, and the 12th amethyst. The 12 gates were 12 pearls. Each gate was made of a single pearl. The great street of the city was of pure gold, like transparent glass. Can you imagine being on one side of that city? You're looking at 1,400 miles of wall made of jewels. All different colors. Everything is transparent but has color. And it emits light, it reflects light, the light shines through it, it just shines in brilliance. What John is trying to give us is that when you look at the city from a distance, it's just sparkling, beautiful, bright colors, and it gleams. And then within the walls is the city made of gold, pure transparent gold, shining golden in the light that sparkles and gleams like a jewel. Moving on to verse 22, he says, I did not see a temple in the city, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. So in the Old Testament, they went to a temple to worship God. This doesn't need a temple because God himself is there physically present. And so we go face to face and worship him. Goes on and says, the city does not need the sun or moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. From this verse, many people think that there's not going to be any sun or moon in the new creation. That's not true. There will be sun and moon and stars. But here in the New Jerusalem, they're not needed. The sun is going to be eclipsed by the brilliance that shines out from God. And so in all the descriptions of God in heaven up to now, they always describe God in terms of fire and light, brilliant light, as bright as the sun, shining even brighter. And this light shines out from him and lights up the whole city, 24/7, forever. Because God is forever in that city, is forever bathed in this brilliant light. And forever those jewels, those gems, the walls, the buildings, everything reflects the glory of God, the brilliance of God. Verse 24, the nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their splendor into it. On that day its gates will, on no day will its gates ever be shut, for there will be no night there. The glory and honor of the nations will be brought into it. So now we have some new information. This new Jerusalem is our heavenly home. But it begins to talk now, there will be nations outside of the city, and they're going to come into the city. And my question is, who are these nations? Something for you to ponder about as families. It says that kings with great splendor are going to come in. There's not going to be any night, so these kings and the people of the nations will always be coming and going, bringing the glory and honor of the nations into the city. Verse 27, nothing impure will ever enter it, nor will anyone who does what is shameful or deceitful, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. Again, it's emphasized that there's nothing bad that's ever going to be there. Among those nations outside the city, there will be no sinners, there will be nothing bad, only pure people whose names are written in the Book of Life. And so the whole earth is going to be good. And then John goes on and he gives us more details about these nations. See, in verse 22, he says, the angel showed me the river of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and the Lamb, down the middle of the great street of the city. And so try to picture this. You have that great throne there, Jesus and the Father on the throne, shining out in their brilliant light. And from under the throne flows a river going down through the great street of the city. So the picture is this, you have this massive street that goes through this massive city. And in the middle of the street is a river that's flowing. And so don't think of a street like High Level's main street and you have this little stream of water going down the middle of it and cars are driving each side of it. Think of a river, a real river, flowing down. Don't think of a street like ours. Think of banks and grass on each side, and there could be streets on where people are walking or driving on outside of that. But think of a beautiful park with a river flowing through it and where people can travel. And along the banks of that river are trees. Going on what John writes there. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. No longer will there be any curse. This river of clear water, called the river of life for the nations, is for the nations to come and drink. And those trees, perhaps propagated from that original tree in the Garden of Eden, the tree of life. But they're called the tree of life also. It says that they're going to bear their fruit every month, so there's always fruit there to eat. And the leaves can also be eaten. And the fruit and the leaves are for the healing of the nations. So the nations are going to come in and they're going to eat of it and they're going to be healed. And it takes us back to a picture like the Garden of Eden, where there was a tree of life and Adam and Eve were human. And if they were going to live, they had to always partake of that tree of life. And God denied them that because they sinned. And so we're back to that where we have humans that they need to partake of this tree of life. Sinless people, but they're partaking of this tree of life. And so if we are resurrected, we have immortal bodies. The New Jerusalem is our heaven. Who are these people? What is he talking about here? But it's going to be part of our heaven. Think about it. I have ideas, but the Bible doesn't tell us. So whatever we have is speculation. Going on with what John says, he says, the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in the city, and his servants will serve him. So I want to say, heaven is not just a place of luxury. Heaven is not just a place of delicious banquets. Heaven's not just a place where we worship God, sing and dance. It is all those things. but heaven is also a place of work. As humans, we were created to work. Work brings meaning and joy and satisfaction into life. It was sin that brought the curse in that turned work into hardship and drudgery. But again, work is going to take its rightful place. And it's going to be a meaningful part of our life, bringing joy and satisfaction. Verse 4, they will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads. Again, John brings us full circle back to this. The pinnacle of joy and delight in heaven will be our relationship with God. Verse 5, there will be no more night. They will not need the light of a lamp or the light of the sun, for the Lord our God will give them light, and they will reign forever and ever. Friends, there's no end to this. I just want to add one more detail about this heaven that this passage doesn't talk about, but Hebrews 12 does. It says that along with us, there's going to be innumerable angels. They're beyond count. We just can't count them. Angels in joyful assembly. And so, this home isn't just for us. It's also for the angels. And we'll be interacting together. So this is your home, your future home. HLEC is only a temporary home. It's not going to last very long. In fact, last summer with the forest fires, we wondered if it was going to be gone then. If you die and go to the present heaven, it too is only a temporary home. The New Jerusalem, it's our eternal, final, our forever home. And what a home it'll be. And to most people, when you say home, that brings thoughts of feelings of warmth and comfort, a sense of security and perhaps even joy. And it's my prayer that as you've listened to this description of heaven this morning, that you've gained that sense of this is home. I want to be there. A sense of excitement for what is coming. Abraham in Hebrews 11 says that he lived his entire life. Everything he did was all based in this, his anticipation of this city that was coming. And so I want to close us with Ephesians 3:20 and 21 as our benediction. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus, throughout all generations, forever and ever.